Recently, there has been an increase in news related to Israel. The Israeli airstrikes on Lebanon have the potential to escalate the conflict, and if Iran becomes involved, further escalation could occur, potentially having negative impacts on Japan as well. For example, if oil prices surge, Japan, which relies on energy imports, could face a serious economic problem. Despite the civilian casualties, Israel continues its attacks, and there seems to be no restraint. While this aggression may not directly involve Israel, the memories of those killed by Israeli bombings will linger. Even if this issue is temporarily resolved, it is likely to resurface in the future. When military action results in significant civilian deaths, its effects tend to last long-term. Even if Israel temporarily suppresses enemy actions through large-scale airstrikes, it could provoke retaliation in the medium to long term. From Israel's perspective, this strategy is not sustainable, and for ordinary citizens living in neighboring countries, it is a catastrophic situation that no one can stop. The only country with influence is the United States, but the U.S. cannot take a critical stance toward Israel. This situation also provides an important lesson for Japan. I want to explore the often overlooked fact that the U.S. is a religious nation, and its religious elements significantly influence its policies. This perspective is not strongly emphasized in Japan. Additionally, I would like to mention Trump's sharp political instincts. It's unclear what is allowed on YouTube when it comes to deep discussions on American politics. In the past, simply using certain words in video titles has resulted in flags being raised. Now, I'd like to move on to today's main topic, which is whether the Japanese government's response to China is adequate. Recently, there was an incident in Shenzhen where a student attending a Japanese school was murdered. In response, the Japanese government is considering budgeting for increased security. However, who will be responsible for the security of Japanese schools? Ultimately, Chinese contractors will be involved, meaning that Japanese tax money will flow to China. Will this truly ensure the safety of the Japanese people? I don't think so. For example, while strengthening security for schools and school buses may be somewhat effective, the areas where Japanese people live in China are well known. Japanese expatriates tend to gather in areas with Japanese grocery stores, restaurants, and salons. In Shanghai, for example, the community of Japanese expatriates is very visible. Therefore, even if school and bus security is increased, it's impossible to protect every individual Japanese person. When going to buy Japanese food, it's also well known which stores sell Japanese products. In Shanghai, there are stores that sell natto in the same packaging as in Japan. Naturally, if you want to buy Japanese food, you'll go to such stores. Ultimately, families that are not absolutely necessary, such as children or spouses, should return to Japan immediately. The Japanese government should formally issue a warning that travel to China is dangerous. If the government takes this stance, Japanese companies will have a legitimate reason to bring employees and their families back to Japan without harassment from the Chinese Communist Party. The U.S. has already issued a similar warning to its citizens, so it's abnormal that Japan has not taken the same action. This delay is especially concerning given the recent attacks targeting Japanese people. Furthermore, as many of you may already know, China has instructed its citizens to be cautious when traveling to Japan. While Japan has not issued any warnings about travel to China, the Chinese Communist Party is unjustly spreading propaganda that Japan is dangerous. This is highly unreasonable. Despite the fact that the Japanese government has not told its citizens to be cautious about traveling to China, false information is being spread in China, where anti-Japanese sentiment is growing. The Chinese government denies this, but the evidence of anti-Japanese education is clear. Videos of Chinese children stomping on the Japanese flag are circulating online, showing the current state of affairs. Japanese politicians should speak out against this, but they remain silent. Meanwhile, China continues to spread disinformation and stoke anti-Japanese sentiment, and the Japanese government has not responded adequately. There are also suspicions that some Japanese politicians may have been compromised by the Chinese Communist Party, possibly through honey traps or other means. This is not baseless speculation but a view held by those knowledgeable in politics. Many of the mid-level officials currently in power within the Chinese Communist Party grew up under anti-Japanese propaganda, and they genuinely dislike Japan, not just as a political strategy. Such individuals are rising within the Chinese Communist Party. The Japanese government should expose China's lies both domestically and internationally and take a firm stance. If Japan does not speak out, the Chinese Communist Party will continue to spread false narratives,